everybody, welcome back to Arcturus. This is the class order hall for Death Knights, and this is the second video in the two-video series looking at Frost Death Knights. Before we go any further, I have to apologize. I'm very sorry. I did not pay attention to which talents I had selected, and I had a talent selected that replaced an ability on my bar. So in the previous video I said that empowered rune weapon was gone. Maybe it was just me hoping it was gone. You guys heard in that video of what a terrible Frost Death Knight I am. It is still here. It still functions like it does on live, so nothing has really changed there. But there is a talent that you're going to see that is capable of replacing empowered rune weapon and making it into something greater. So, with that said, let's take a look at this talent tree, which is completely brand new. Usually before these videos, I take a look at the talent trees and I start to compare them, so I can find out which talents, are the same, and which they've brought back, and how they've changed a little bit, so I can tell you how they've changed a little bit. And I'm just looking down the list, I can't find a single freaking talent that is the same. So you're gonna get a brand new talent tree in Warlords of Draenor Frost Death Knights, so hype it up. Let's go ahead and start with tier 56, starting with Shattering Strikes. If there are 5 stacks of Razor Ice, that is your rune forging. 5 stacks of Razor Ice on the target, Frost Strike will consume them and deal 50% additional damage. Icy Talons, this is a familiar name popping up. It is a passive. Frost Strike also increases your melee attack speed by 10% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. I like this, personally. Having a 30% increased attack speed if you can get 3 Frost Strikes up, pretty good. There is Murderous Efficiency. Consuming the Killing Machine effect has a 50% chance to cause you to gain 1 rune. Runes are important. Really, the only major ability that is going to be costing more than 1 rune is going to be Obliterate. So being able to have 1 rune return is pretty potent to have back. In the 47 tier, we have Freezing Fog. Howling Blast and Frost Fever deal 50% increased damage. So flat damage buff. So far these talents are kind of underwhelming, mostly passives. But you will see some active abilities as we get further down the line here. We have Frozen Pulse. When you have no full runes, your auto attacks radiate intense cold, inflicting 21,000 frost damage on all nearby enemies. Let's see if we can actually get this to, if there's an actual spell visual of this. I'm not sure if there is or not. So let's spam Obliterate and get rid of all my runes. So, as you can see there's a small little kind of frost aura that appears around me. That is from the runes not being there. So that's pretty cool. As you can see, I will burn all of my runes again, so you can see it again. There it is right there. So that's pretty cool. And then in the third here, we have Horn of Winter. I promised you in the last video that would be back as a talent. And you blow the Horn of Winter, gaining 1 rune and generating 5 runic power. That sounds incredibly underwhelming. I would expect that to change. For a 30-second cooldown, 5 runic power seems a little low. I would expect it to be maybe 15, 20, but 1 rune and 5 runic power seems absurdly low. So it's very possible that may be changing in the future, or maybe I'm just completely out of touch of Frost Death Knights and that is broken. But as I mentioned in the video, all the passive buffs have been removed from the game, so bringing back Horn of Winter kind of to its old roots in the very beginning. A short cooldown that you can use to buff yourself is basically what it is here in the talent tree. In the 58 tier, we have Ice Cap. If you don't know what Ice Cap is, that's actually the cool flowers you get up in Winter Spring up in Azeroth, one of the old herbalism items. But it's a passive ability here. Your Frost Strike, Frost Scythe, and Obliterate critical strikes reduce the remaining cooldown of your Pillar of Frost by 1 second. So just so you know, Pillar of Frost is a 1-minute cooldown. Using all of those abilities their critical strikes will reduce the cooldown of Pillar of Frost by 1 second. And remember, Pillar of Frost is a 20% increased strength and grants you immunity from knockbacks. And that lasts 20 seconds. So I'm not quite sure what kind of uptime you can get on that, but I'm guessing that you can get close to a 50% uptime on Pillar of Frost with Ice Cap. Hungering Rune Weapon, the stupid talent that ruined the last video, is an ability that replaces your Empower Rune Weapon. It empowers your rune weapon, gaining 1 rune and 5 runic power instantly and every 1.5 seconds for 9 seconds. So, for basically 10 times, or sorry, it's 1.5 seconds for 9 seconds. So it's going to be, what, about 6 ticks, and then you get the initial, so you get around 35 runic power. And then on top of that, you will get 6 runes over the course of that period. That is the change with Hungering Rune Weapon versus Empower Rune Weapon. Lastly, here we have Avalanche. While your Pillar of Frost is active, your melee critical strikes cause jagged icicles to fall on your nearby enemies, dealing 29,000 frost damage. Let's go ahead and activate Pillar of Frost, so we can go ahead and see this here. Melee critical strikes. Come on, give me a melee critical strike. That doesn't want to even give it to me. I'm getting nothing but, I'm getting nothing here. They're not giving me anything. Okay. Oh, there we go. There we go. It granted it to me at the very end. So you saw the little ice shards come down. That's Avalanche for you. It literally copy and pasted the old, I believe that's the old Avalanche, model for Frost, well, mages in general. It copy pasted the Avalanche model, and so you can see it hit the different targets there. In the 60 tier, we have Abomination's Might. Obliterate critical strikes have a chance to drive lesser enemies into the ground, stunning them for 2 seconds. Players are dazed for 5 seconds instead. So, pretty strong ability, and we're starting to see a crit theme show for Death Knights here. If you start, depending on how you select your talents, you may want to just, stack up on the crit, and then you'll really be doing some damage. There is Blinding Sleet. Targets in a cone in front of you are blinded, causing them to wander disoriented for 4 seconds. Damage may cancel effect. This sounds like a complete ripoff of Dragon's Breath, which is a fire mage ability. But I already have it activated here, so let's go ahead and see what it looks like. And we'll just use it in front of these targets here. Here's Blinding Sleet. And that's what it does. It's just, you're dishing out the cold damage, and it makes them all disoriented for 4 seconds. So, in all honesty, why would you need that as a Frost Death Knight? I mean, maybe if you're trying to escape, but even then, Wraith Walk Away, I don't get it. Snare them with Chains of Ice and Wraith Walk Away. To be honest, this is very underwhelming for a Frost Death Knight. It's understandable for a ranged class, but for a melee class, it doesn't make much sense to me. Winter is coming. They indiscriminately took titles from Game of Thrones, which is irritating because I am still about a couple of days away from episode 9. That is the time frame of which I am recording this video, so just seeing references there is kind of irritating because I want it to come, and for the final seasons of for the final episodes of season 6 to come through. But we have Winter is coming. Enemies struck 5 times by Remorseless Winter while your Pillar of Frost is active are stunned for 4 seconds. So they're bringing back some of the utility that is in the original Remorseless Winter. But your Pillar of Frost has to be activated. So think of another way you can build these talents here, is building it around Pillar of Frost. The ability, I've already forgotten which one it is, but there's one that allows you to Ice Cap right here. Is the critical strikes are allowing you to reduce the damage on that Pillar of Frost. So if you take something like Ice Cap, then you can take something like Winter is Coming, though you would have to give up Abomination's Might. You can take something like Winter is Coming and possibly have a 50% uptime in which your 20-second cooldown Remorseless Winter is able to stun enemies for 4 seconds. So that is something very powerful, very potent, and way better than Blinding Sleet. Let's just be honest here. In the 75 tier, with Volatile Shielding, your anti-magic shell turns your enemies' pathetic magic against them, absorbing 35% more damage but generating no runic power. When it expires, 25% of all damage absorbed is dealt as arcane damage divided among nearby enemies. Arcane damage. I don't know why arcane damage. Maybe because it's anti-magic shell, but I don't know why it's arcane damage. I'm sorry. I don't have an answer for that one for you. But there's a little bit of a buff there for your anti-magic shell if you choose to go that route. We have Permafrost. When you deal damage with auto attacks, gain an absorb shield equal to 30% of the damage dealt. I kind of like this here. Reminds me of I think Kerrigan in Heroes of Storm has an ability very similar to this. White Walker, there's another Game of Thrones reference. You take 20% reduced damage you take 20% reduced damage while Wraith Walk is active. When you enter or leave Wraith Walk, all nearby enemies are slowed for 50%. Now, let me say something here. I don't know if I was completely if I completely clarified this, because I related it to Reaper in Overwatch. You do take damage in Wraith Walk, but the movement impairing effects are suppressed. So you'll take 20% reduced damage with White Walker when you enter Wraith Walk, and then you'll snare everybody by 50% when you come out. Not sure I like this. I personally, out of this tier, I like Permafrost the best. I think it's the best one there. Especially if you start building up your attack speed with something like Icy Talons and talents that you have. I can see Permafrost being better. In the 90 tier, before we get to Frostbite, because that's an actual ability, we have Runic Attenuation. Auto attacks generate 1 runic power. And then you have, so that's really good if you have a lot of haste. And then you have Gathering Storm. Each rune spent during Remorseless Winter increases its damage by 10% and extends it by 0.5 seconds. So, Remorseless Winter. Winter is coming. Ice Cap. Shattering, is it Shattering Strikes? No, not Shattering Strikes. So Ice Cap Winter is coming and Gathering Storm. Fuse all really well together with your Remorseless Winter. And let's go ahead and activate this here, and let's see just how much we can get off of, just how much damage we can, how much we can get back from this. So we've already spent 6 runes, and we're checking for the uptime on this. And it just went down, and it looks like we've improved it from about a 40% uptime to a 60% uptime with this Gathering Storm talent. So if you're spending your runes as quickly as possible, you can increase into about a 60% uptime on Remorseless Winter, which then in turn works well with Winter's Coming and Ice Cap. The other ability here is Frost Scythe. I need to get out of combat. The problem is that Blasted Frost Fever lasts forever. A sweeping attack that strikes all enemies in front of you for 20,000 frost damage. This attack benefits from Killing Machine. Critical strikes with Frost Scythe deal 4 times the normal damage. That's pretty strong. I'm not gonna lie, I think that's really strong. Something that people should watch out for. I'll go ahead and use it here. I probably shouldn't have used Remorseless Winter because I can't show you the visual very well from this. But go ahead and use this. Okay, so here we have right here, dealing about 23,000 damage. Let's see if we can get a crit off so we can see just how much damage it does with a crit. There's a lot of numbers popping up, so it's kind of difficult to see here. Let's see if we can go to a single target just so I can show you guys a little bit better. And we'll see if we can get a better, kind of a better idea of how much more damage it'll deal. There we go, 122,000 damage. That's a lot. That's a lot. Let's go ahead and just Frost Strike for comparison. A crit with a Frost Strike does 134,000 damage. Regular does 68,000 damage. Remember, Frost Strike does hit twice because you're dual weapons. But that's a lot of damage as Frost Sight, and it's a cleave. So, you know, you're going to have to compare that to the others. I actually really like this. It's either this or Gathering Storm. Do know that this is another ability that's taking runes off of your bar. And I will say, as a Frost Death Knight, as I've been kind of playing around, you do have a tendency to have downtime and run out pretty quickly several times. So that's something you need to be careful and pay attention to with how much rune spending that is going on, because personally I hate downtime. If I have a lot of downtime, it's really frustrating, and that's something that I don't want. So we have these last abilities, which are long cooldown abilities. So I'm probably going to go into the PvP tree, and then we'll come back and look at the last of these. But the first one is going to be, well, first let's go with Obliteration here. Okay, for the next 8 seconds, every Frost Strike hit triggers Killing Machine and obliterates cost 1 less rune. So let's just go ahead and use this here. So you can see, really not much of a spell visual effect. As you can see, my blades are kind of ethereal, which is really cool. But that is really all that comes out of Obliteration. Nothing too special. Nothing too exciting, I should say. I'm going to read off the rest of these, and then hopefully we'll get a chance to show them without having too much delay. First, we have Glacial Advance. Summons glacial spikes from the ground that advance forward, each dealing 109,000 frost damage to enemies near the eruption point. Once again, another ability that costs runes. As I said before, you are going to truck through runes pretty quickly. So it's something you want to be careful of. But definitely something that could be useful. However, as I said with the Syndragosa ability and your artifact weapon, anything that goes in a straight line just doesn't work well in World of Warcraft. Unless it's very quick, it's fast, it doesn't work as well, because there's so many moving elements. In a PvE environment, it works great, especially if you have a large boss. Glacial Advance, most likely, the hitbox of the boss is going to be so large that Glacial Advance, every single spike is going to hit the boss. So that may end up being a massive damage increase, and Glacial Advance will be the go-to talent for Frost Death Knights, but I cannot be too sure. So let's go ahead and activate this here so we can go ahead and see. I'm going to go ahead and target this one right here, and we'll go ahead and use it. Oh, it didn't go very far because I was on the box, so let's give it a second here. And I'll back up a little bit so we can see the actual advance of the glaciers. Short cooldown, only 14 seconds, so let's go ahead and use it again. And as you can see right there, it goes across. So it's actually pretty quick. It doesn't say its range. It does look like it has about a 10-yard range though. So here's 15 yards right here. Thank you to Mind Freeze. So we have 15 yards right here. Oh, it has a really long range. Let's see if we can see just how far it'll actually go. In the meantime, let's take a look at Breath of Syndragosa. This works exactly as it does on live. Brief damage, deal a lot of damage as a opponent in front of you. Uses runic power, 12 runic power per second. I believe that's exactly how things, I think on live it uses 15 per second. Now instead it's going to use 12 per second. So there's a little bit of a change there. But otherwise, Breath of Syndragosa works exactly the same. I'm going to go ahead and use this Glacial Advance here, and we're going to see just how far this goes. Okay, so it looks like we were at the very end. So it looks like it does have a 15-yard range. That's about as far as it will go, is 15 yards. That is the absolute max on Glacial Advance. And honestly, if the raid boss is really big, every single one of those spikes is going to hit, and I just don't see any other PvEer taking anything else. Like these others could be very strong, maybe Obliteration, but this is a lot of damage for only a 14-second cooldown and 1 rune. Think about it. You basically, that was what, 6 spikes that went out? I can't even count them all. It looks like there were 7 to 8 spikes that go out. That's That's 800, almost 900,000 damage from Glacial Advance for one rune. There's no way, if your boss has a large hitbox, that any PvEer is going to be taking anything else, because that is massive. 15-second cooldown, there's no competition there. Breath of Cinder Gosha. I need to build up my runic power here just so you guys can see. Go ahead and use it here. Oh, still don't have enough. Come on, give me runic power. And there we go. Nice spell visual. Lots of particle effects. Blizzard's really up in their particle effect game in World of Warcraft Legion, so definitely looks better. So that is the brand new talent tree. That is the longest talent tree I've ever had to go through, because it's just, everything's brand new. Like, every single thing is brand new. Not only like once, maybe twice could I go through and say, oh, this is the same, moving on. So Frost Death Knights, you have a brand new talent tree, which is great. In the PvP talent tree, do know that the first two tiers of the PvP talent tree are the same, and then the last four tiers are more spec specific and class specific. So how you're going to level up PvP in Warlords, and not Warlords Trainer, in World of Warcraft Legion, is you will start at level 1 and you will level all your way up to level 50, just like you do in Call of Duty, and then when you reach level 50 you can Prestige. And you will level up starting with Gladiator's Medallion in the top left hand corner, and then you go down to Frozen Center at the very bottom left. And then you'll start back up with Adaptation, and then go all the way down to Killing Machine, and you will continue to work your way through. That is how it is going to function. I believe the first, you can get a full rose access to at least one in each talent tier by, I think, level 12. So once you reach PvP level 12, you'll have access to like the first 6 in this left-hand row, and then you'll start moving into the other rows. And the very last talent, I believe, is given at level 46. You can Prestige and lose all of it and start back with Gladiator's Medallion, or you can just stay there and be like, forget Prestiging, I don't want to. And that's totally fine as well. So, with the first row, this is the same across every single specialization in the game, and it deals with your Honorable Medallion. When you enter Battlegrounds, you will be given an Honorable Medallion, and this is kind of, it's like the heirloom trinket. It's a 3-minute cooldown trinket that you have. You can take Gladiator's Medallion, which is the first talent here, which reduces it down to a 2-minute cooldown, and it replaces it. So you have a 2-minute cooldown trinket. Really not much else to say there. There's Adaptation, which is my personal favorite for DPS classes. All loss of control effects with a duration of 5 seconds or more will activate your Honorable Medallion spell, but only causes it to incur a 60-second cooldown. So you basically have a 60-second, trinket, but you do not have control over it. However, you can use that trinket, but it will incur a 3-minute cooldown on Adaptation as opposed to the 60-second cooldown on Adaptation. The last talent here is Relentless. It will actually replace your Honorable Medallion. The duration of incoming crowd control effects is reduced by 25%. Honestly, don't see anybody but tanks taking this, and I've said this in every single video. The only one that would be even close is a Restoration Druid, and that's because they can put hot, 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 hot on top of themselves, and then they keep themselves alive. So, honestly, it's something that I really don't see taking. No, I'm not going to duel you, dude. So, in the second tier, we have the melee DPS tier, which is first Hardiness. While above 80% health, you take 20% less damage. You have Reinforced Armor, health increased by 10%. And then you have Sparring. Physical melee attacks have a 20% chance to be blunted, dealing 50% reduced damage. Basically, pick which one that you feel helps you the best. It's really kind of a personal preference thing. In the third tier, we're starting into the DK specific talents. We have Cadaverous Pallor. I think I pronounced that right. You have a 20% chance when struck by a magical spell for it to be completely absorbed and converted into a disease on yourself, dealing nature damage over time. So this basically is a reduction in burst. I see this only being used in certain situations. Like, I'm dueling a Destruction Warlock. I'd rather that Chaos Bolt didn't hurt as much. Or a Pyroblast to the face. But if you're talking about ranged DPS with more sustained damage, I just, no. I just don't see it being as good. You have Dark Simulacrum. Once again, no clue if I pronounced that correctly. 20 runic power, however, only a 30-second cooldown. I believe the original was a 2-minute cooldown. Places a dark ward on an enemy that persists for 12 seconds, triggering when an enemy next spends mana on a spell, allowing the Death Knight to unleash the exact duplicate of that spell. Against non-players, only absorbs some harmful spells. Against non-players. So basically, we're talking about... actually, I don't even know what they would be talking about because this is supposed to be PvE only. So maybe some of the PvE mobs... I mean, PvP only. So maybe some of the PvE mobs have some pretty broken abilities that you can use. That may be in reference to this. Also, your PvP talents, if they're activated in somewhere other than a BG and so forth, it could be in reference to that. But honestly, this is one of the most fun abilities. I don't see why you wouldn't take this, especially since this cadaverous pallor, I just think is... I'm not gonna lie, I think it's junk, but I could be a complete noob. So, I'm here to give you the information, and you guys and the elites out there, casuals, whatever you may be, you'll be able to decide which one you think is the best and what is the best for the class. There's anti-magic zone. This essentially works exactly the same as it does on live. It's stronger though. It's a 60% reduction. So honestly, I see this tier either being between one of these two abilities, Dark Simulacrum and then Anti-Magic Zone. Both of them are good. We have this aura tier here. First is Decomposing Aura. All enemies within 10 yards slowly decay, losing 3% of their max health every 5.2 seconds. Stacks up to 10 times. Lasts for 5 seconds. I have not been able to test a lot of these in PvP because it's difficult to test things in PvP because not only are the queues kind of long because, you know, there's not as many players in beta, but I can't switch talents in and out of PvP to quickly go through this, and it would take the research time on these videos that I have to make, which a lot of videos I'm making, it would double the research time that it would take on this. And it's also an uncontrolled environment, so I can't go out there and show you myself because then I wouldn't be able to narrate for you and give you the information on this stuff. I honestly would constantly be losing focus. But all enemies within 10 yards slowly decay 3% of their maximum health every 5.2 seconds, stacks up to 10 times. I'm pretty sure that does not mean that they start losing 30% of their maximum health every 5.2 seconds. That would make no sense. My guess is that it will stack up to 10 times, and then that's how long it will last. So if you're in range of someone for 10 yards, it will stack up to 10 times, so it will be a 50-second debuff on the target that will constantly leech 3% of their health every 5.2 seconds. So that kind of gives you an idea. And that's probably why it says every 5.2 seconds, but it only lasts for 5 seconds. That means you actually have to be in range of the target for a while for this to actually do something, you know. It's the decomposing aura. You actually have to be near the person to have that treacherous stench of yours to actually decompose the target. So that's what it's going to mean when it says stacks up to 10 times. We have Heartstop Aura. It decreases the cooldown recovery rate of abilities by 30% to all enemies within 10 yards. Oh my goodness, this would be so great for cooldown dependent classes. If you have a class that is completely cooldown dependent, you will love using this ability. It will be amazing. These auras are amazing. Lastly, we have Necrotic Aura. All enemies within 10 yards take 8% increased magical damage. Considering that a lot of your stuff is Frost, minus the, what we got, Obliterate, and that's about it. Yeah, it's pretty much just Obliterate. And then if you decide to use Frost Scythe instead of Obliterate, it's all Frost damage. This can be very potent. Especially if you have a lot of mages on the team. I have noticed that you're able to change talents, I believe, inside the battleground before it starts. I could be wrong about that, but I do remember being able to change my talents inside. So if you get into the battleground, you notice that you got like a lot of mages and whatnot. Okay, I'm going to pop on Necrotic Aura. And, okay, I get into a battleground and I open up the other team and I see, oh, they've got a whole bunch of players with a lot of cooldown heavy abilities, okay, I'm going to put on Heartstop Aura. That's pretty cool. Or maybe with melee, if you got a lot of targets with a lot of melee and you're going to be in the thick of things, decomposing aura is your more thing. So this is a really cool tier. Honestly, this is a really cool tier. It's a counter pick tier. You can literally look at your competition and be like, okay, I'm going with this, and this is going to make a difference. So, in this fifth tier, the first one we have is going to be Death Chill. Chains of Ice now freezes the target, rooting them in place for 4 seconds, but now has a 5-second cooldown. I do believe this is very similar. This was in the game in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it was an empowerment that you got in Warlords of Draenor, I can't remember, but it has been in the game before, and now it is back as a talent. You have Northern Winds. Critical strike chance of your Howling Blast increased by 50%, but no longer deals area of effect damage. If you are a BG hero, not a raid BG, but a BG hero, you will probably avoid this like the storm because you love seeing yourself at the top of those damage charts, and I promise you, whether you realize it or not every single time, the reason you are at the top of those charts is because of Howling Blast and Frost Fever. So you will not choose this talent. The last ability here is Tundra Stalker. Damage of your Frost Strike is increased by 25% on snared targets. Your target should pretty much always be snared. And the critical strike chance is increased by 50% on rooted targets. So, really this is the only root you have. There aren't too many roots in a toolkit for a Death Knight. There's a lot of snares, a lot of reduction, there's dazing, not too many roots, so I'm not sure about the 50%, but definitely the 25% on snared target. Either way, it's going to empower your Frost Strike. So it's kind of a choice of which one you want to take. I think Death Chill is probably my favorite because I really do like just stopping someone in place. In our last tier, we have Frozen Center. The radius of your Remorseless Winter is reduced by 50%, but its damage is increased by 100%. So, I honestly am not a big fan of this. When you counter this stuff like latency and lag, reducing that radius on Remorseless Winter I don't think is ever a good idea. So personally, I would not take this. That's just my opinion. Yes, your damage is increased, and maybe, but even if your lag and latency is unbelievable, maybe the other person is a laggy mess, and you may think he's right next to you when he's actually pretty far, and that's something you don't want. So, I'm going to throw that out there for you guys to think about before you choose his talent. Killing Machine replaces Killing Machine. I don't get it. So, this basically will make it replaces Killing Machine passive. They really need to come up with a new name. But basically, it's an instant ability, 45-second cooldown. Your next Obliterate Frost Scythe is guaranteed to be a critical strike with an additional 50% critical strike damage. Okay. Just think about this here. Remember that critical strikes with Frost Scythe deal 4 times normal damage. Deals a lot. And it's only 1 rune. The only problem is you're next, so it's only 1. That honestly is not very satisfying at all. And I don't think Rhyme, the ability Rhyme affects, or it wouldn't be Rhyme, it would be the original Killing Machine, affects Frost Scythe. So this would affect Frost Scythe, but it's on a. I just don't see people take this. It's on a cooldown. It's only 1 ability. Yes, it gives you massive burst potential, 50% increased critical strike damage, and then on top of that you have the 4 times as much damage with the critical strike. But Obliterate already hits for 100,000, so you're talking about what critical strikes are like 200 or double damage, 200,000 damage versus 80,000 times. 4 times as much damage only if it's a critical strike. I don't know. That's going to be up to people to decide. Honestly, both of these are underwhelming. Chill Streak deals 15% of the target's total damage and frost damage and reduces their movement speed by 70% for 4 seconds. Chill Streak bounces up to 5 times between closest targets. This is my talent. I've chosen it. This is what I've selected as my talent. Mostly because I find these two really underwhelming. The real interesting tier, honestly, is the Aura tier. That's the real fun tier. of Death Knights here for Frost Death Knights. This one's actually pretty cool. This allows you to an AoE snare basically an entire team by 70%. That's potent, you know. 70%. We've discussed how 70% is so much more potent than 50%, and this is, I think, the only ability in the game that actually has an AoE 70% slow. So if you're in a raid setting, sorry, not a raid setting, a rated battleground setting, being able to chain, it looks like 5 times 6 targets, um, chain 6 targets with a 70% snare for 4 seconds, minute cooldown, and 13% of the target's total health in frost damage, that's your winner right there. And that's honestly what I would use in PvP. So that's everything for a Frost Death Knight in World of Warcraft Legion. I do believe I spent quite a bit of time on commentary with Frost Death Knights, partially because of how the new effects have changed in the first episode. I wanted to show those off, and then in this episode, there's just so many. Like, you have a brand new talent tree. Like, yes, everyone gets a new honor talent tree, but you had a brand new PvE talent tree as well. So there's a lot of changes coming to Frost Death Knights in World of Warcraft Legion. However, I do take note that your playstyle is still pretty close to the same. So with that, that is everything for Frost Death Knight in World of Warcraft Legion. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you guys in the next. Tearless out.